I was going to clean up the back, but I figured why lie to kids and tell them
Parks
that
and
this
Rec
is,
life.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's the way it is. All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, one, two, three. Welcome back, everybody, to the Parks and Recreation, Sport, Tourism, Outdoor Recreation Professional Interview Series. Today we have another guest. This one's coming in from a little bit up north in Wisconsin. Adrienne Lacy. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And so it's a rainy day here. It's kind of gloomy, but we had a great Memorial Day weekend. It was beautiful. How was yours?
It wasn't as nice as it could be
Yeah,
for Memorial Day, but it was typical Wisconsin weather, so
yeah.
60s, you
Oh,
know.
so yeah, we were in like the high 60s for Saturday, and then the low 70s for Sunday, and then mid 70s yesterday.
Yeah, similar-ish, but
Yeah,
not great. Clear skies though, so we got to have
yeah,
beautiful Memorial Day
yeah. Good,
remembrances and stuff.
sure. So I guess with these we kind of we do is we talk about where you're from originally, and we kind of trace your professional pathway. So I guess with that, tell us about where you're originally from, where you grew up, where you went to school as far as high school goes.
Okay, well, I'm from a little town, actually, about 1,000 people in south central Wisconsin. It's called Cambridge. The only reason anyone's ever heard of it is it's where the NASCAR driver Matt Kenseth was from, or is from. And so that's the only reason, but it's a town of about 1,000 people. And that's where I started.
Awesome. And did you grow up there most of your life in that area?
Yes, never. My mom moved into our house when she was 18. It was my grandparents' cottage,
Okay.
their second summer, their lake house, and my mom moved into it when she was 18, and I lived there all my life and was the fifth generation from my dad's side to graduate from our high school. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
so yeah, yeah.
Very
Birth
cool.
to 18, going off to college, same house, same bedroom, same everything.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's cool that you have that lineage with that same high school as well.
Hmm.
So after high school, so after high school, you went to college.
Yep.
Where'd you go, and what'd you study, and how'd you land on your major and all that kind of stuff?
Well, first semester I made the college mistake of that I said I was going to St. Cloud State, and so dang it, I was going to St. Cloud State. But I applied to a different college before I even left for St. Cloud State because I knew going there that was not for me. I thought I was going to go into special ed teaching, but had some high school experience working in the middle school special ed room and decided it wasn't for me.
Okay.
But I was definitely not going to listen to my parents and let me tell me any different. But so I transferred to the University of Wisconsin La Crosse my freshman year at semester and ended up graduating from there. And I had in Cambridge, because it was so small, our little league t-ball, all that kind of stuff was dying, and there was no one coordinating it. We didn't have a Parks and Recreation department at all. Still, didn't get one until I was out of college, actually. And um, but we had a local foundation, and the
Mhm.
foundation did a lot of good in the community and did a lot of things in the community, and they offered to pay me at 16 to be in charge of the to be the commissioner of baseball for our little league, for our 4-year-old up through our American Legion program, so up through our high
Okay.
schoolers. And they paid me every summer to be the commissioner. And so when I transferred to lacrosse, I knew I wanted to go into sport management. That was one of the reasons I transferred to lacrosse, was
Oh,
to
okay.
get an exercise and sports science degree. Thought I was going to go into baseball completely.
Yeah.
And ended up going into baseball, but worked for the rec sports while I was at lacrosse as well. Worked as an intramural supervisor.
And how was that? Did you enjoy that intramural experience?
Oh yeah, yeah. Nope. I knew what I liked because I'd been the commissioner, done the baseball stuff, and knew that I enjoyed recreation and supervising intramurals, a little bit of work, front desk work, but mostly supervising of officials and stuff like that, and enjoyed it very much. Only spent 2.5 years. I graduated in 3.5. Well, finished the schoolwork in 3.5 years because I desperately wanted. We had to finish with an internship, and I
Hmm.
wanted to make sure that I did it in baseball. And there was no point in going into work for a baseball team in May. I wanted to start before the season started.
Sure.
So rushed through lacrosse a little bit,
Yeah.
but in order to make that happen. But worked in the summer times. I worked for a Northwoods Wood Bat League, a college summer baseball league. Worked for a team I was their first intern they ever hired. Now they sell out. Well, not this year because of COVID, but now they sell out. And
Yeah.
the fire department had to put a cap on the amount of fans they could have in the stands.
Okay.
Um, and so worked in baseball in my summer times, and actually still did the commissioner of baseball as much as I could in the summertime, and worked at our local park at
Yeah.
so a little bit of
So,
everything.
so you had a good array of experiences, and you talked about wanting to go into baseball. I know, after your internship and into, did you have that position after your internship with the minor league baseball?
Went to work for the Braves, AAA Braves, for my internship. That was back when they were still in Virginia. Um, and no, I stayed there for a couple months after my internship was over. Um, but had my fiance had gone to work in South Carolina as a sports information director at a college, and so went down there where I was the athletic academic tutor, basically the athletics tutor for a year, until I got hired as an assistant general manager for another minor league baseball team for a year.
So what was the minor league there?
Minor league there was another college summer wood bat league.
Okay.
Um, it was in Gastonia, North Carolina. So turns out, but that's where I found out that I do not like sales.
Okay.
I don't like cold calls. I don't want to make sales. When I worked for the Braves, I was community relations. I was the person that made people happy to be at the ballpark.
Right.
Get them to the ballpark. I'm gonna be your woman. I'm gonna have them have fun. I created new programs. We did that. I did that in Gastonia too. I could do all that. Um, but don't ask me to call people and beg them to come to the ballpark or
Right.
give us money. I'm just not good at that.
Yeah, and I think it takes a certain personality to be comfortable and good at that, right? And because I know I'm not that person either, you know. Um,
Oh, I can make you happy as a clam once you get there.
yeah.
Everything that I was good at, of taking the mascot to, grand openings, driving the players to Walmart to sign autographs, all that kind of stuff. I was good at. I could do that. Helping with donations, running the birthday parties at the ballpark, answering fans' questions. Fine. Having to cold call to get you to come, not my idea of a good time.
Right. And not too long after that, you ended up moving to Texas, right?
Yeah, my husband, by then he was my husband.
Yeah.
Um, we wanted out of South Carolina. It was not our cup of tea. And we, he's from Texas originally
Okay.
and was willing to move back to Fort Worth or Houston. He got a job as a sports information director in Fort Worth.
Okay.
I of course, went with him. Um, and I started applying. I interviewed with with the Rangers. I can't remember what it was, but it was something in sales, and I was like,
Yeah.
not again. And interviewed with the YMCA, and interviewed with the city of Fort Worth for a recreation programmer job, just because didn't know what I didn't know at that point,
Yeah.
and ended up getting the recreation programmer for the city of Fort Worth job. That turned out to be, and I knew this, but was a 3 to midnight job. I
Yeah.
worked Tuesday through Saturday, 3 to midnight, and um, but turns out everything I was good at in the baseball and the community relations and stuff like that
Yeah.
was translated really well to Parks and Rec. So
And how long were you there at
uh,
Fort
I
Worth?
worked, I worked for Fort Worth for 10 years,
Okay.
but only worked that late night programmer job for less than a year. Took a transfer to another programmer job that worked a traditional, not,
Yeah.
shouldn't say that, there's no traditional 9 to 5, but worked a more, I got off at 8 instead of midnight type
Yeah.
situation.
A little bit more
Um,
conducive to regular lifestyle thing.
Yeah, well, and that was part of the problem with even with if we were going to work in recreation or whatever, was that with if I was going to have kids, how are my kids going to how with a husband who worked in athletics and was traveling with the team and stuff, I needed to be able to be a little flexible or on the days that he couldn't be and vice versa. Um, but only worked at that rec program or at that second place, I don't know, 6 months and got promoted to being a community center supervisor. So the bulk of my time in Fort Worth was as a community center supervisor, of which at the time was the highest grossing rec center in the city.
And so so with that, what when you talk about you're moving into that because you're getting away from the programming as being the primary focus, and something
Mhm.
that you said you felt comfortable and enjoyed, making people happy, program that kind of stuff. So how did you feel moving into that supervisory role, and what kind of skills did you have in place that you think helped you be successful?
Well, despite what my office looks like, and you guys can't see the mess on my desk or anything like that, um, I am organized mentally,
Yeah.
maybe not physically. But I know where everything is on my desk. And so for the supervisory, like that was what it felt like a fairly natural fit. I'm good with kids and working with kids and adults and stuff like that, but I'm better probably at supervising the staff that's doing that and being the person that gets to come in and do it. I still teach a preschool class, even though I mean, when we'll get into it, uh, where I've been moved up to, but I still teach a Sporties for Shorties class once a week because it allows me to hang out with 2 and 3 year olds who think I
Yeah.
am the greatest gift they've ever been given. And it gives me the chance to be part of the community still. But the supervisor, if I hadn't been a rec programmer first, I wouldn't have understood because it helped me understand what the rec programmers were doing,
Hmm.
that I was now supervising. And it allowed me, and I'm never been real good about one being hands off in those type of situations, so I still was helping my rec programmers. And honestly, the rec programmer, at least in the Fort Worth area, is generally a entry level out of college job.
Yeah.
And so I viewed it as my chance to I at Southwest, 8 years as a supervisor. I think I went through 9 programmers, but only one of them left to leave the profession.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. They
Yeah.
didn't take jobs they didn't go work a counter somewhere because they hated the profession. They didn't, they moved on to either better jobs or maybe they moved back closer to home still to a recreation job. I mean, I felt like that was a way my job there was to mentor those people into becoming, so I didn't step away from the programming as much as maybe you could otherwise.
Yeah.
And even the one that we lost that left the profession, he left to go be a firefighter, which he always wanted to do. So I was okay with that too.
Yeah, it's a hard, when people have those certain goals, it's hard to compete with
Right.
that, I would
What was I
say.
going to talk him out of that? Yeah. He saw the recreation as getting a step into the city, I think, more than
Yeah.
but
And I think that's during your time there is about the time I met you, because I think we were introduced uh, by Shane. Is that
yes,
right?
Shane
Okay.
was one of my oops, sorry, hold on, let me hang on. Shane, how do I sorry. I've
You're
never
fine.
had to ignore my boss before. It's ignoring my boss, he can deal with it. Um should be able to hear me through the wall. Shane actually was on that committee that hired me to being the late night programmer. He had
Yeah.
just recently, so it's all his fault, is what I always tell him when he gives
Yeah.
me grief. And we were co-workers. He supervised the rec center that was the closest to mine.
Okay.
Fort Worth does neighborhood centers
Hmm.
where they expect everybody to be able to get to their neighborhood center within about a 5 mile radius. So
Yeah.
rec centers aren't that far apart, actually.
And I know, and something that I got to brag about a little bit is, I like Shane a lot. I think very highly of him. So when he says great things about somebody, which he did about Miss Adrienne Lacy, that means a lot to me. I'm like, I find him to be a good judge of character, professionalism, all that. And He always sang your praises and thought you were such an awesome person, professional, and all that.
Yeah,
Um,
he'd never say that to my face, so I appreciate you saying
yeah,
that.
yeah, right. That's sometimes how it works, right? But like he
Yeah,
did, he's like, man, and I don't remember why he introduced you and I to begin with. Um, but yeah, it was just a matter of like he thought the world of you, and he's like, man, this is somebody that's going to do really well in our profession. And, kind of the same things. It's funny because I remember him saying like, she's got the passion for making people happy, which is a big component of our world. So,
yeah. He and
yeah,
I have stayed in touch. I mean, that's a good example of someone that I worked with for a short time, you know, and then, is still someone that I text on a fairly regular basis, and he, you know, texts back, and it actually still sits as one of my, because don't tell him, but despite what I say about him out loud, it is impressive what he's done with his life.
right. Yeah,
And he is a very good at what he does.
right.
And so he can talk a good game to anyone.
Dude, he is a
So
talker, that's for sure.
if they are able to call him up and for a reference, he can. No, but he's a great guy, and I coached his kids in t-ball when I was like,
Nice.
and his oldest was, when he moved away, his oldest, I was her ride once a week. So
Well, I know.
we,
So from Fort Worth, you transferred to another job there, kind of locally.
yep.
There in Arlington, right?
Yeah, I took basically a lateral move to go to another organization. And I did it for a couple reasons. We had had some personal things in our family that had made me stay in Fort Worth longer than we ever expected.
Okay.
We had always said that we were only going to live in Fort Worth um as long as my husband's grandmother was alive. She lived 2 hours east of us, and that my children weren't going to go to kindergarten in Texas. We were going to move. We moved to Texas when his grandmother was 86. She died at 99.
Oh, okay.
So we really didn't expect that. And my husband got sick.
Yeah.
Very, very sick. The summer before my daughter's kindergarten year.
Yeah.
And so we were lucky. He did 9 months of chemo and then had a transplant. And his university didn't fire him, didn't get rid of him like they had the right to, and allowed him to stay on and work remotely as much as possible.
Sure.
And he felt like he owed them a couple years of work,
Okay.
for that, of loyalty. He owed
Sure.
them some loyalty for the loyalty that they showed him.
Yeah.
And, but at the same time, I'd been in the same job for I can't remember, supervising. I think I did 8 or 9 years
Okay.
total. And it was fine, and I enjoyed it, and I loved my people, and I coached. Um, we continued to coach even when I wasn't part of our job anymore. Um, and I coached multiple generations of the same family, and I really enjoyed it. But it was starting to feel sort of stagnant. I'd set out to build the first 10 and under tennis courts, free public ones in the state of Texas, and they were built. I had wanted to put a mural. We had a really large basketball gym wall that faced a high school there. And it, so a lot of people thought we were part of the high school because we were just across the road from them. And so I thought, I'll get a mural put on it. And I did, and I got a mural put on it for free, and it wasn't exactly what anyone expected, but dang it, if you don't know what Southwest, we had people say, "Are you the home of the giant green babies?" Look up
Uh,
Southwest Community Center's mural sometime.
okay.
He made them green because it stood out better, but it is an interesting mural, but it distinguishes us from the high school next door.
Yeah.
And that was the point of it, and it was free, and it was by some famous muralist, or it was, big deal.
That's funny.
And I sort of had, short of the getting a new playground, which was something I desperately wanted, I had accomplished a lot there. Arlington is They won a gold medal. They were gold medal finalists many years leading up to it. they did things differently. I knew some friends who'd gone to Arlington to work, and it was just time for me to move on and try something new. And so I did. And like I said, it was a lateral move, but Arlington recognized my experience and made it worth my while. Um, and it was worth it because it just taught a whole different way of doing things.
Right.
You know, when you start in one place at 24 and you're still there at whatever 36 or whatever it was, it starts to feel stagnant and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so going to Arlington allowed me to it pushed me more and
Sure.
I wasn't stagnant anymore.
I had a similar thing as I recently transferred positions, and kind of like what you've said is there's a variety of factors or variables that go into that, but kind of the same thing is when you move, you realize. For me, I realized more after I moved that I needed it personally and
Mm-hmm.
professionally,
Yep.
and like you said, my first academic job was at Eastern Kentucky University and loved it. Loved it, kind of like you said, loved the people,
Yep.
loved the place. I hold it very dear and near to my heart. But coming here to Arkansas Tech was a good move for me personally and professionally, just to,
Yep.
for lack of a better word, open my eyes to some things and new
Exactly.
ways of doing things and all that, and finding out how how good some people do different things, and how
Mm-hmm.
I learned to appreciate some other stuff at my previous institution as well. And not that it's all bad. I don't want to mean it's too bad, but
No.
you kind of see more of that whole balance of stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Well, and I didn't know it at the time, but the chance to work for um Lemuel Randolph, who's the director at Arlington, I mean, that was a opportunity that anyone should take if they have a chance to.
yeah.
You know, I didn't know that at the time, but
Yeah. And I
just
think that's part of it too, right? You never know. You move to a new place and you take a chance, and then you open yourself to some things that you just don't know,
hmm
right? You don't know what you don't know, kind of thing.
exactly, exactly.
So you were there for a few years,
hmm
and then you made the decision to move back up to Wisconsin, right? From
Yeah,
there?
so yeah, I wasn't in Arlington too long, just a little bit over a year and a half, a year and 9 months or so. Um and I had wanted to come back to Wisconsin, be closer to family, give my husband a chance to medically retire, that he needed. And he
Hmm.
wasn't going to do it if we lived in Texas because he was too loyal to his school to do that. And had applied for a job, a brand new job in the Marinette, Wisconsin, which is, look at the state, it's right here. All Wisconsinites always do, this is how you can feel your state. And we're right here. You cross the downtown and you're in the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And we came and actually went through all this for an executive director role. And they flew me up here. And by the time I'd landed in Fort Worth the next day, had been told I didn't have the job. And that was okay. I mean, we sort of, it was a big move and did we really want to make it? Blah, blah, and so we talked ourselves into that. It was okay. We were disappointed, and when we'd come up here, we'd come up in December and it was beautiful. And we're just like, oh my gosh, if it's this pretty in December, imagine what it is in the summertime. And because we sit on Lake Michigan, or we actually sit on the Green Bay, but it, the mouth of it is right here into Lake Michigan. And just, fine, we made it. Well, about 6 weeks later, they called and said, yes, they'd hired this new executive director, but they'd created a new position as an assistant recreation director, because they wanted me. And
That's pretty
so,
impressive, right?
yeah, oh yeah, it was very different because, I had applied for jobs on and off in those years and, had had a ton of interviews. It felt like, I'm sure it wasn't as bad as it seems in my head, but I had a ton of interviews and hadn't gotten the job. But it's really hard to have remote interviews, and hopefully one thing that's come out of this pandemic is that people will be more willing to have them and be
Yeah.
more willing to accept that somebody who applies for a job from far away wants the job.
Right.
Because I think that was against me a lot in terms of feedback I got.
Sure.
And I'm like, I wouldn't apply for a job just to waste everyone's time, but whatever. And um, so they recruited me hard. We ended up taking it, even though it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. Um, there were some promises made that ended up being taking a while to fulfill. Um, but I'm now the recreation superintendent. You know, for the city. We have an executive director of recreation and events is what he is, and then I'm the recreation superintendent underneath
Okay.
him, and then I have staff underneath me. Um, but a big part of it is that we just opened, well, not just anymore. In 2019, we opened a 120,000 square foot rec center in a town of 10,000 people.
Dang.
Yeah. So we have a full NHL sheet of ice. We have three tennis courts, two of that can turn into basketball courts, and four dedicated pickleball courts. Um, and that room's about 20,000 square feet and it's painted blue, with the green light or with green for the courts and stuff, but it's actually concrete. So
Okay.
you can have events in there. And then we have an 80 by, I can't remember, but 80-yard long, uh, turf field
Okay.
that's surrounded by a walking track, and then seven rooms as well. Um, and so there was the opportunity to open this brand new building, which was supposed to open. I was supposed to come in March. It was supposed to open in March of 2018. We opened in January of 2019.
So almost a year delayed.
Yeah, yeah.
Seems like that's pretty
Well,
typical for construction.
well, we had some mistakes that were made before we got here. They didn't have a general contractor on site. They didn't have anyone because of how small we are. There was no one really overseeing the construction. And we have these large panels on the front of the building that got delivered, and they got delivered with numbers. So put them up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And instead of putting them up like that, they just grabbed the first one and cut it to fit. They were all cut. And so they got to the end of the building and there were gaps between the roof and where these panels ended.
Goodness.
So then there was litigation. Well, there's still litigation about whose fault that is. It's $1 million worth of construction material that needs to be replaced.
Right.
So it was a mess.
Another experience that you had.
Yeah, yeah. But instead of being moved into this brand new beautiful building, I worked in a hallway in a unair conditioned old building. Um, that was, you know, sort of hard.
Yeah. So, and you've been there so in 2018, so that's what, 3 years at this
Yeah,
point.
I came in March of 2018. I'm working into my second summer here, or I
Okay.
mean fourth summer here.
Yeah. And so, you know, you've kind of moved around quite a bit, right? So, Virginia, South Carolina, Texas, Wisconsin, and now you're back up closer to some the family stuff. So for young folks or young professionals or students or whatnot that are thinking about this, and you hit on it really well, I think for you know looking outside, and when we talk about these virtual interviews and some people don't consider you because they're like, they're from a different state, who cares, they're not going to come, but they are, and that's something we push our students a lot for, is to go out and spread your wings.
Yeah.
Is there any do you have any like advice or nuggets of wisdom for these young professionals as they start looking for positions? I don't want to say externally because that's not the right word for me, but looking across the states, and like we have a lot of students that say, I really want to live in Florida, South Carolina, or I really want to live out west,
Mhm.
or wherever it may be. So you've moved around a lot. Do you have any like nuggets of wisdom for folks that may be looking at the same thing?
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I grew up in the house that my mom had lived in since she was 18, and my dad lived in one house until he was, 22, and then he moved into the house with my parents, and it's been So we were really stable and really not moving around. And now both me and my brother live, well, I live in state now, but both of us have gone out. But I think that's the biggest thing is you can't limit yourself. You see that so much of, you went to school here and then you went, maybe you looked outside in this area. But the problem is that's not necessarily, you got to go to the jobs. And just because you're in one job doesn't mean that's your forever job. You hear a lot about, these recreation professionals that have been in the same place and they're retiring after 30 years and the same job. And that's great. And it's good. And I'm happy for them. I feel like those might not be that might not be the best for the people coming out of college today. Just because, first of all, I don't think it's looked as bad if I get your application and you've worked at 5 places in 6 years and you have no good reasoning for that, maybe I'm going to look at you a little funny. But if I see that you've worked in 5 places in 10 years and each one's progressively better, that means that the people were doing their job. They were getting you. And if it's that you are progressively trying to get closer to, let's say your family is in Marinette and you took that first job because you could get it in Indiana. And then you moved to Illinois to do something similar, but maybe just a little bit better. That's okay. You know, Work to where you want to go. It stinks. But here's what I learned is as someone who, like I said, K through 12, same building, graduated 50 years to the day after my grandpa did from that same building. Um, and so I thought, oh, this is gonna be hard, and I know, you might not have kids yet, but that was our big concern. My kids are happier here than they've been anywhere else. And I'm sure Dr. Bradley would tell you a very similar thing for his kids. Is that they're more resilient than you give them credit for, first of all, and they have more ability to do it. That was a hard stuff for us. Was that family was our biggest scared for moving.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, but one time after one of the moves, one of my kids looked at me and said, "Mom, you're happier than you used to be."
That's awesome.
So if you're in a job that you hate, guess what? Your kids know that.
Yeah.
And I know that's a little bit in the future for students that don't have it, but it's okay. I think that was a mistake that I made coming out was that I was looking for this is where I'm going to be forever. And so then I wasn't looking as far out as I should have been looking
Yeah.
out. I wasn't looking that this is my next 2 year job or 3 years or whatever it takes for me to get what I need from this position. And some people are lucky, they get that forever job right away. But it's not going to happen. And, I went from an agency of, 600 or whatever in Fort Worth, 600 employees,
Yeah.
to an agency of six tops,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5. Yeah, we have six full-time employees. And, if I hadn't had that 600, I probably wouldn't be very good at the six and
Right.
vice versa.
Well,
So,
and I think you're exactly right. At my previous institution and the same here, it seems like it's kind of like I say kick them in the britches is a common term I use. You got to get them out and really make them look out there. But kind of doing the same thing, saying like get out there, and if your first job is in Nevada or Idaho, and then you move closer to come back and move closer by Colorado, and then you come to Kansas, it's okay to work through that. But that
mhm.
first job is the most critical, and then make when you move or you change jobs, make it make sense, whatever that is, if it's professionally or personally. But when you get in front of somebody and you say, "Why did you change jobs?" You just have a good answer,
Right.
right? Um, and sometimes that answer is it wasn't a good fit. Like I've had a couple of those experiences, and it just wasn't a good fit. Um, you know, Sometimes is getting closer to home. Like I'm only 3 hours from my parents or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's but getting out there and exploring is very important.
That's it.
Uh,
And you can put up with, and I'm not saying you have to go to something that's a horrible, if you're being bullied or abused or whatever, whatever word you want to use, you don't need to put up with that. If it's just that I hate my job, you can put up with that for a little bit until that next thing comes.
right.
You know, I will be the first to admit that I threw up every day at that assistant general manager baseball job when it
Yeah.
was cold calling days. That just it was awful. Um,
Right.
but I knew that it was a job that would look good, and the people were nice. It wasn't anything. It was all internal. It wasn't external. Um, you know,
Just wasn't a
and,
good
and
fit.
it wasn't a good fit exactly, and that's it. And people just need to. I think that sometimes we did a lot on in Arlington. I was part of a committee that worked on onboarding and why
Yeah.
people leave and stuff like that. And we did a lot on people walking off the job and stuff. And that's not the answer. That's
Right.
I just want to put that's not the answer.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and like you said, sometimes you leave for different reasons,
mhm.
but I think you think about it's a common thing I tell my kids. It's not what you said; it's how you said it. And so you got to think about that professionally as well. It's not sometimes it's not what you did; it's how you did
Right,
it. And if you're gonna leave, do it the professional way
right,
and be open. Like I don't plan on staying here anymore. Whether you got another job lined up or it's just time to move on, communicate
right,
that with your supervisor and sometimes there's an alleviation. Like how can we make things better? Or sometimes it's just all right. I appreciate it. Let's talk about an exit plan or whatever it may be.
right.
Before because we're kind of closing in on
Yeah.
we're on 36 minutes here. The one thing I want to ask you before we get to the last two questions that I ask everybody is I know you and I have both had a experience with NRPA and
Mhm.
professional associations. And are you CPRP or
Yeah.
CPRP?
CPRP.
CPRP. So the Certified Parks and Rec Professional, and through the National Recreation and Park Association, NRPA, that everybody calls it. So can you talk a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to being involved with a professional association, whether it's at the
Yep.
state or national level?
Okay, and I'll preface this with I am now a member of the CPRP CPRE National Committee.
Okay,
So
very cool.
I have some I have some bias towards this, to be honest. But I'll tell you, it was one of the scariest parts about moving for me was I was heavily involved in TRAPS, the Texas Recreation and Parks Society. I was established. I was on committees. People knew me. I had the executive director's phone number. Like I was like, oh my gosh, going to Wisconsin and doing this. No one knows me. I know one professional in the whole state. Like this is a scary thought of restarting. And so I did. I firmly believe it because my degree's in sport management. I actually got my CPR. I got and my master's actually is in sports leadership because I got my master's back in the day when online was not a thing.
Yeah.
And for me to get my master's, or there was no place for me to get my master's locally, and so it's from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, back when, and it's an online thing, but that wasn't known back when I got mine. Um, and I got my CPRP as soon as I was eligible for it because I wanted to prove that while I didn't have that Parks and Rec degree, I was committed to Parks and Rec. And
Yeah.
so that's why I got it as soon as I was eligible for it. Um, and so when I got to Wisconsin, I joined WPRA
Hmm.
and met it. And I'm actually, um, I don't know if it was because no one else wanted it or what, but I am WPRA's in four four different areas, five different areas, and I'm the recreation section board member for our area. But it was a way to immediately make myself be involved.
Yeah.
And those whatever state you're in, they're going to be desperate for some kind of committee members or something. It might not be you're not going to be the president right away. You're not going to be a board member right away necessarily, but they're looking for people who want to be involved. And so that's huge. Be involved. I mean, WPRA, I'm the rec section board for our area, um, for the Northeast Wisconsin area. And then I'm also on the diversity task group. And so they're always looking for people like that. Um, and NRPA is always looking for people. I mean, I sit on the CPRP, CPRE board now. Um, and I also something. Oh, I'm the vice president for the USTA Wisconsin here
Okay.
too. Because they're desperate for parks and recreation professionals because they only know it from the teaching side of things, and
Right.
they need to integrate with us. Um, and so I really think it's also the way that you're going to get other jobs or other moving within that state, and not necessarily, the people that I need when I went to director's school, graduated from director's school last year, and got scholarships both years. And the people who wrote my letters were TRAPS people
Right.
because they're the established people within NRPA and and they met me through TRAPS. So they're still the people I deal with and talk with. And so I think it's so important. I mean, obviously, Dr. Bradley and I met each other this way,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the only way to do it. And I just think that even if you're not actively on a committee or part of it, if you can join the webinars or Wisconsin does monthly chats where we get on Zoom calls and do a chat. Even if you're not actively participating, but you have it on in the background, you're going to meet those people, and those are the people you're going to see it. I see the same people. I mean, how many people go to NRPA conference in a normal year? 7,000 people?
Yeah.
Somehow,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's about right. Yeah.
yeah, somehow I run into the same 70 every year. You know, I have a friend from Maui. I can't pronounce his name. I'm very apologetic about it. He knows it. He thinks Adrienne's a funny name. We bring each other swag every year.
Yeah.
And just when we run it, because we run into each other every year, and he'll be like, Fort Worth is usually what he says, but Fort Worth.
Yeah.
He'll pull out his Hawaiian swag for me, and I'll pull out whatever I have.
Yeah.
It's a way to make you not feel so alone. We sometimes
Sure.
feel where we are, and I know this can happen in Arkansas too. Um, I feel alone. I mean, there's other
Right.
parks and recreation professionals within the area. No one competes with a 120,000 square foot building. We
Right.
draw from an hour out. I have programs I have a twice a week hockey program that kids come drive 2 hours for.
Yeah.
There's not parks and recreation. It's a way to make yourself feel a part of the profession.
Yeah. I agree.
You're
You
not an
know,
island.
well, and I'll echo what you said. That you start building those small nucleus of networks, and it expands out a little bit, and you meet people that at this point. I mean, it's probably been 10 years since I've met you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not like we're like texting each other daily or anything like that, but like casually that I'll reach out or whatnot, and I really that's a part of it that I love that we can create these networks that people that we meet through a conference or through a friend or whatnot, and you feel like you're more connected in a place where you really can be siloed pretty easily.
Yeah, because
Um,
your community is not necessarily going to understand what you're doing.
right.
You know, the but and with you, for me, I teach for the University of Arizona, and I know that there's another, and see, can't even think of his name. James, he just got out of the profession. Bow tie. You know who I'm talking about from
And I
Virginia.
can't think of it either. Golly. Okay. Well,
But you
we'll
know who I'm talking about,
apologize to
right?
him right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
But you know who I'm talking about?
Yes. I can see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
You said
he's
bow
like
tie,
a,
and
yeah,
well,
yeah.
bow tie makes it stand out. But yeah,
Yeah, yes, but he was at NRPA, or he was an NRPA president, I think, at one point, and
why
um,
can't I think of his name?
Worley, James
Yes.
Worley,
Yes. Yes.
there, got
So
there.
James, we're really sorry, but we now have
Yeah,
nailed down your name. Yeah.
we did, yes, but I've reached out to, texted him, emailed him about schoolwork before, about
Yeah.
how he deals with a student, because I knew he taught on the side, and it was
Yeah.
just a part-time job, and so just to have that, to be
Right.
able to reach out to that, because a lot of departments are, I mean, make my 6-man team look huge,
Yeah.
and especially for new students. And so just the ability to reach out and say, did I handle this situation correctly?
Right.
What did you do when the t-ball teams were fighting? Is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, so you kind of answered one of my last questions, but not the other one. So the last question, I'll wrap this up, is if you were not in parks and recreation or sports or tourism or anything like that, and you could pick, you had your pick of whatever job you wanted, right? If you, your dream job
Mhm.
or just something you wanted to do, what would you be doing if you weren't doing parks and rec and you get the kind of the pick of
Oh,
the litter of the jobs?
I don't know. You took sports out too, though. So
Yeah, so I kind of combine. Well, I mean,
yeah.
you know what? It doesn't matter. This is our interview. We can do whatever we want.
Okay. Okay. Can I be the third base coach for the Braves?
Yeah, yeah, sure,
Actually, I want to be first base coach.
sure.
They do a little bit. I'm going for the less amount of work here.
Less
I'm
work,
gonna go
maximum exposure.
exactly. I'm gonna go with first base coach because well is still difficult. You don't have to. You don't get in trouble for sending the guy home the
Right.
same way as Ron Washington, the third base coach. See, I can name the third base coach for the Braves.
Yeah.
Actually,
So
it's
and
Eric Young
you still get
seniors.
to be out there, and that's what I love about baseball in general is the it starts early in the year when it's kind of cool, and then it goes to the summer and it gets cool again in the fall. But like you can never, I feel like you can never be at a baseball stadium and not have a good time, right?
And people that can are weird. That's what I've
Yeah.
decided.
Like you drink the overpriced beers, you have a hot dog, but yeah, no, I think that's a good choice. A first base coach for the Braves. I think that's a good
Yeah.
choice.
In all honesty, if I'd gone back and I wasn't in recreation, what my skills would translate to best is first grade teacher.
Yeah. I think I could see that, right? You did
Yeah.
the sporties for shorties or whatever that was called.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm tiny, like you can't tell in here, but I'm only 4'11". I don't want to be teaching those kids that are bigger than me. You know, about third grade is where they start to get to my height.
Yeah,
I like those first graders. They're well enough that they can, tie their own shoes most of the time,
sure.
probably go to the bathroom without telling me type
Yeah,
situation, but still need me to help them.
right,
Yeah, no, I still teach that Sporties for Shorties class once a week because I really like being told that I am their favorite person ever.
right.
Yeah. Even when the moms look at me and be like, huh, that was me 20 minutes ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
it's all right.
I
We're
taught
having
them how to
fun.
throw a ball.
All right.
But yeah, no, dream job without having to have any qualifications. I'm gonna go with first base coach for the Braves.
Sure, sure. Hey, I
But
think that's a pretty good choice.
realistically, first grade teacher.
Yeah, I think they're. I can see both of them, so I think they're
Yeah,
both high quality choices.
yeah. I am the first base coach for the 9U All Stars out of Marinette right now. So
So you do have some qualifications. See, you said
I do
without any
have.
qualifications, but you do.
I do. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I am the head coach, and I chose to coach first base and make someone else coach third base. 'Cause-
I'll kind of wrap this up with
yeah.
when I was in Muskogee, Oklahoma, working at the
Hmm.
rec center there. I got the opportunity to have a little boys basketball team. I was their coach, and I want to say they were fourth or fifth grade, right in there, and the skill levels were, I mean, wide. There's kids that didn't know what a basketball was to kids that their parents or whatnot were watching the NBA or whatever. Were, not only were good, but were well versed in the terms of basketball and all that. So, and that's got to be, and I have that picture saved and all that. But that was one of the funnest times. It's just like everything. You're like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening. To oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Right. So
That's
it
why
was awesome.
Marinette's the perfect choice is for me, is because it allows me. I was never going to be a good director in Fort Worth because he's stuck, he or she, but in this case a he, is stuck going to meetings and doing the business stuff and doing all that and stuff that I'm good at. I don't mind. I mean, when we're done here today, I'm going to finish up payroll and then I have some hiring to do. So I'm good at that stuff. But here in Marinette, where it's a small department, I'm still part of the community,
Yeah.
and I can still take that time to go coach a team. And yes, it's only 30 minutes of my week, but obviously I've brought up that I teach Sporties for Shorties
Yeah.
because it's 30 minutes of my week,
Yeah.
and that's part of the reason I like the size of the community I'm in. It's because it allows me to be, even at my position, to still do the parts of my job I love, that programming part, but that's only a small portion.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect spot to kind of wrap up is to talk about,
Yeah.
the fit. You got to find the right fit.
Yes.
Um, Adrienne, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you.
And I know you said you've got some payroll and some other stuff that I don't
Yeah.
envy you on. So
No.
we'll let you go. And I hope you're doing well overall. It was good to talk to you. And, always, I've said this to almost everybody, but you especially, let me know if you ever need anything, even if it's to just catch up. Just
Yeah.
reach out
Appreciate
anytime.
it. Same back at you.
All right. Thank you so much, Adrienne.
Thank you.
Bye bye.